Please welcome ALEC National Chairman, Speaker of the Mississippi House of Representatives, Philip Gunn.
Good morning. Welcome to our second day of the 2020 States and Nations Policy Summit. We're thrilled to have you back here today. We got another great day planned for you. Although we aren't together face-to-face, we've done our best to try to create as many virtual face-to-face opportunities as possible. I want to invite you to check out all of the features of Pathable, which is our virtual conference platform. In addition to great policy programming, you can schedule a one-on-one meeting. You can visit the exhibit hall. You can even attend a happy hour. So I encourage you to check out all those features. We've talked a lot about 2020, and in 2020, we've all missed out on opportunities to work, for family travel. We've missed social events like weddings and graduations. And in fact, we'd all be together right now in Washington if it weren't for all the pandemic challenges that we faced. Even so, there are people and organizations all over the world that have come together to innovate solutions and restore confidence in science and flight and in the travel and the tourism industry. So now, in keeping with that theme, we want to introduce our next panel, which will discuss many of the innovations in the aerospace industry and that will help people return to normal and hopefully return to the normal flight opportunities that we have all grown accustomed to. I'd like to thank our sponsor for this panel. It's Raytheon Technologies. They are the parent company of Collins Aerospace. Personally, I will say that they've been great partners with us here in Mississippi. We have a Raytheon facility here, and they have been tremendous partners with the state of Mississippi. So I'm personally thrilled that they are sponsoring this panel this morning. Their work in ensuring flight safety is integral in our effort to return to flight, to return to normal. So now I'll introduce our panel moderator, ALEC Executive Vice President of External Relations, Mr. Bill Meyerly, and he will start our conversation. So Bill, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Speaker Gunn, and good morning and welcome to our discussion on innovation and a return to flight. In just over 100 years, the possibility of flight made the world much smaller and redefined what travel and human connectivity mean. Modern aviation changed what it means to go there. 2020 has been a stress test for local economies and for society as a whole. And throughout it, we've heard the common refrain, to trust science. Even as a vaccine is nearly ready to deploy, as we learned about during yesterday's opening session, we know an additional remedy is needed for return to flight. Today, people want to know and understand more about their health and safety at every intersection of their journey. And of course, there are additional societal impacts, human impacts, when entire industries are put on pause. Joining our discussion today is Collins Aerospace CEO, Mr. Stephen Timm. Collins Aerospace was created in 2018 by bringing together UTC Aerospace Systems and Rockwell Collins. Collins Aerospace is a global leader in aviation and defense markets with $26 billion in net sales and more than 70,000 employees around the world. Tori Barnes is Executive Vice President of Public Affairs and Policy at the U.S. Travel Association. U.S. Travel elevates the importance of the travel industry in the trade, commerce, and security arenas, including upgrading America's air travel infrastructure, improving connectivity, and growing the future of mobility. Transportation Security Administration Executive Assistant Administrator Stacy Fitzmaurice, who's responsible for providing innovative solutions and processes to protect the U.S. transportation system and the traveling public. These solutions include transportation security, pre-screening programs, and strengthening TSA operational capabilities. And finally, North Carolina Representative and former ALEC National Chairman Jason Sain. Representative Sain serves the people of the North Carolina's 97th House District and serves as chairman of the Appropriations Committee. He's long been recognized as a technology and innovation leader, both in North Carolina and around the country. Thank you for joining today's discussion. But before we get to opening remarks, let's watch this brief video.
What if we just made spacesuits and outfitted almost every astronaut since Freedom 7? That'd be a big deal. What if we just invented modern aviation and made the most advanced engines in history? What if we just created missile defense and guidance systems used to protect the freedoms we hold dear? If we just did any one of those things, it'd be pretty special. But when the companies responsible for it all bring together bold leadership, we accomplish even more. Like building eco-aviation solutions, developing contactless airport technology, and creating real-time satellite imaging to enable instantaneous identification of assets on the ground. Nearly 200,000 employees working together to create safer, more connected flight, intelligent space systems, and smarter defense. And of course, we still make spacesuits. Raytheon Technologies, the future of aerospace and defense.
Thank you, Bill, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for all of the ALEC members to your organization for allowing me to be here to take part of this discussion today on a topic of obviously great importance to all of us, the global economic recovery in our global economy. I'm here specifically to speak of the state of the aviation industry, which is undoubtedly one of the hardest hit by the pandemic. And less than a year ago, the future for us was extremely bright for the aerospace and defense industry. Take a look at the stats on Aerospace Industries Association information here, which shows the industry's impact on the U.S. economy. Aerospace and defense is more than 2 million employees with an average compensation of more than $100,000 a year. But it's also important to point out for every 100 airline jobs, there's 300 more supported outside of our industry, both directly and indirectly. A thriving aviation industry nearly supports 11 million jobs worldwide, and the commercial airline operation supports nearly 360 billion visitor expenditures in goods and services annually. For perspective, it's the 7th leading contributor to overall productivity in the United States, and overall contributes more to the global GDP than the automobile manufacturing sector or pharmaceutical manufacturing. It's a key enabler for the global commerce, and while hurting right now, it has the potential to help fuel an accelerated economic recovery. Go to the next chart, if you would. With that in mind, take a look at how COVID-19 has drastically altered the commercial air travel landscape. At our lowest point in April, air passenger travel was down 95%. And now even today, we're down 50%. And as you can see here, more than 1,400 US aircraft are currently inactive since the beginning of 2020. And even those flying, significantly, they're flying at a reduced capacity. And it's not just that fewer airplanes are flying, it's also about fewer manufacturing jobs to build new airplanes. In fact, because of COVID, the global civil aircraft production rates are dropping nearly 50%. This is expected to translate into a $100 billion decline in aircraft revenues this year. Clearly a significant impact on our industry and our people. Unfortunately, that translates into job losses. The commercial aviation industry extends, and including Collins, by the way, extends to already having shedded 100,000 jobs. And I would say there's another 200,000 at risk if we experience an extended recovery. And what I can tell you is that Collins Aerospace has been one of the companies severely impacted by COVID-19, along with others. We've got job losses, furloughs, and other cost reduction measures necessary to effectively manage the level of our business with the reduced levels of impact of the aviation industry. As it stands now, passenger air travel is not expected to return to 2019 levels for 3 to 5 years from now. The aviation market may take a few years to recover, but not if we take action right now to accelerate that recovery. And I look forward to speaking today on ways that we can recover faster and work together to make that happen. Thank you.
Now we'll welcome Tori Barnes. Tori, welcome.
Thanks. Good morning, Bill. Thanks so much for having me today. And it's great to be with you. I think as all of us wish we would be face-to-face in Washington as well. I'm here just from U.S. Travel Association, really wanting to emphasize, much like Stephen mentioned, how really the travel and tourism industry has been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, but really is ultimately the key to a broader recovery for the industry. Before the pandemic, the travel industry accounted for 1 in 10 jobs, was one of the largest sectors of the economy, employing 15.8 million people and creating an economic output of 1.1 trillion. Travel is a top 10 employer in all 50 states. and international visitor spending is key. The travel industry is actually the country's largest export in 2019, accounting for $59 billion in exports. And as you can see in this chart here, the 2020 pandemic has had a really devastating impact on the broader economy, but especially the travel industry. A 30% decline of overall domestic travel, 76% decline in international travel, a 45% decline in travel spending, which is $510 billion, and a $1.2 trillion total economic loss because of the broader impact that travel has on the economy. And I think it's important to note that, again, as Stephen mentioned, there really are a lot of things that we can do to help restart the travel economy. Health and safety is obviously first and foremost on that, and the industry has put together really, really robust health and safety practices and compliance with CDC guidelines. And really, we have really tried to help ensure that there's a confidence in those that do choose to travel, so that they know that they can get out there in a safe and healthy way, again, if they choose to do so. And that ultimately, as we have more availability of vaccine and other technologies, that really there will be a broader impact on the economy, and a way to shorten this 2024, 2025 time horizon. Again, I think one of the things that folks also don't always think of when they think of the travel industry is the broader impact that we have on cities and states across this country. When you think of the meetings and events sector, part of our economy that comes and does a whole citywide takeover for a convention, or the destination marketing organizations that bring essentially economic development to cities and states across the country, it really is an important tool to really help to rebuild the economy once folks are willing to do so. And so we've been working with the current administration, with the Congress. We've already been engaged with with Vice President Biden, or President-elect Biden's transition team, because we really do feel like the key to restarting this economy is crushing this virus, but bringing back the travel economy. So looking forward to talking to you all today, but really the opportunity here to collaborate with government and the private sector on ways to really rebuild travel, and therefore have a shortened recovery timeline for this pandemic.
Thank you very much, Tori. Really appreciate your perspective. Administrator Fitzmaurice, would you please offer your remarks?
Yes, Bill, thank you, and good morning, and thank you so much for the opportunity to really be part of what I think is a very important panel and discussion today. TSA, like so many, have been directly impacted by this pandemic, with over 3,400 of our workforce becoming infected, and 10, unfortunately, who have succumbed to this disease. We also have seen firsthand the tremendous reductions in travel that this pandemic has caused. And while we have seen some recovery in the air travel volumes, especially compared to the record low that we had back in April, we are still really significantly below what was the previous year's average of around 2.5 million passengers a day. And, when we look at the recovery rates, we're also seeing some pretty significant differences, in different parts of the country. But to address the challenges that the pandemic has imposed, TSA, beginning last spring, took immediate action and has continued to make impactful changes to our security checkpoints across the nation's airports through policy, contractual, procedural, technological solutions. And really, these efforts were designed really in part to do three primary things. One, first and foremost, to help reduce the spread of the virus. Second, to protect the health of our officers as well as the traveling public. And third, really to rebuild the confidence to support the recovery of the aviation system. Now, I will tell you that our efforts certainly are not done alone, but rather in very close coordination with our international, federal, state, local, and industry partners. TSA helped to develop and publish the US government's Road to Recovery, which provides guidance to airports and airlines for implementing measures to mitigate the public health risks associated with COVID-19, to help them prepare for an increase in travel volume, and throughout all of this to ensure that neither safety nor security are compromised. But to give you a sense of some of the specific things that TSA has done, early on, we established standards for the usage of personal protective equipment for all of our frontline employees. We also offer face coverings to passengers if they need to undergo a pat down and are not already wearing a face covering. We also continue to find ways to reduce basically the passenger and officer exposure at the points of our security process when we would interact. And we're doing this through a variety of ways. One, through the installation of acrylic barriers, but also through the introduction of touchless technologies. So these would be seen in things like when you're engaging with TSA for identity validation and ID checks, as well as the physical screening for both passengers as well as their carry-on baggage. And we've documented all of these practices in a communicable disease response playbook that we've also shared with our industry partners. TSA also has received some supplemental funding, which has allowed us to create the Airport Reimbursement Program. And this program allows airport authorities, airlines, and other tenant operators to be reimbursed for cleaning services at their airport. But really, you know, in all of this, kind of getting the word out to travelers about what we have done and continue to do is really important to us. And to this end, TSA has launched a Stay Healthy and Stay Secure campaign to really explain these protective measures that we've implemented. And, you know, the purpose of this campaign is to help ensure and restore the public's confidence in air travel if they should choose to travel, while we continue to fulfill our critical security mission at TSA.
Thank you, Administrator Fitzmaurice. And Chairman Sain?
Well, good morning to you, Bill, and everybody on the panel, and everyone at ALEC. This is certainly different. Chairman Gunn, appreciate your introduction this morning. Again, we'll adjust accordingly and do what we need to do, but it is great to be with everybody on the panel. And behind me is an empty North Carolina beach. If you've been to Nag's Head, I know many of you have, that's Jeanette's Pier behind me. Our good folks that visit North Carolina have this wonderful Zoom backgrounds that they provided. So I thought I'd use that. But sadly, not enough people on this empty beach. And that's kind of the state of where we're at. I got on my first plane trip just a couple of weeks ago, went to San Diego from Charlotte, North Carolina, went into the airport, which is normally, you know, one of the 10th busiest airports in the country. 50 million people come through Charlotte every year. It was a little less crowded, as you might imagine. And then landing in San Diego, which is not the most bustling airport, but usually pretty busy. At our terminal, it seemed like a ghost town. It was a little bit surreal. So travel's been, you know, much different. But I can tell you this: having gone to the airport through security and transferring twice during my trip, never felt safer. So there's a lot of measures that are already in place that should give travelers confidence. But for us as legislators, I think one of the things that we all know, whether it's a big airport, small airport, or anything in between, we know that when people aren't traveling, they aren't spending money in our local economies, they're not coming to our states to visit. And so that's going to be a problem, and it's going to be a long-term problem. I think some of the earlier slides, you know, pointed out just what a big deal that's going to be. And so we know it's really here, but I don't think the full impacts of what's happening have really, you know, settled in our minds at this point. But for legislators, you know, things we need to concentrate on are our workforce development, making sure that we're ready when travel comes back, our economic development, of course. These are always big topics for us: safety, health precautions, and so forth. And then what kind of support we can see from the federal government. You know, there are things that we can do now that will plan for that future when people do return to travel. And I think the states that understand that the best will be at the forefront, and they'll get their economies kick-started again and back to get folks back to work. But it's an interesting predicament that we find ourselves in. I know that with the folks that are on this call, we'll talk more about how the safety precautions are going into place, what we can do to help folks feel safer when they travel, but really and ultimately get people back to work. I do a number of talk shows every week, like I know a lot of legislators do, and I always say to folks, the number one place where we get revenue to spend on your behalf at the state level is through productivity. And people aren't productive if they aren't traveling for work, they aren't going to have the meetings, they aren't investing in the economies. So I think we all know that that's something that's going to be at the top of our legislative list as we get back into session in this coming year. Bill, great to be here today, and look forward to more of the panel.
Thank you so much, Chairman Sain. Thanks to each of our panelists. Now under our question and answer section, first question goes to Mr. Steve Timm. Steve, as we've discussed, the COVID impacts to companies like Collins Aerospace have been significant. Can you tell us a little bit more about Collins Aerospace and the breadth of the technologies in this area?
Sure. Let me give you a little overview of Collins Aerospace, and then we'll get into how this is relevant maybe to an accelerated recovery. Collins Aerospace, for those of you that know us, is a world leader in providing systems and solutions for commercial aviation as well as defense. I'm not going to go through this chart in detail. You have a chart here, but what it shows is the range of equipment and systems that we produce on an airplane, which interestingly are designed, manufactured, and supported in nearly every state in the U.S., as well as 300 locations globally. So we are certainly a global company interested in that global recovery. Starting at the front of the airplane, just to give you a quick overview of some of the things we do in your states. As an example, we make avionics and flight deck systems, wheels and brakes, landing gear. And as a passenger, nearly everything you touch, actually, from the seating to the lighting to the call buttons, onboard connectivity solutions, and even the laboratories are made by Collins Aerospace. We provide numerous solutions ranging from the nacelle that helps reduce the noise of the engine, to flight controls, to life rafts. All this is to help make flying safe, sustainable, and comfortable. And while it's not pictured here, we also play a pretty large role in passenger journeys as they actually travel through an airport that make it possible for you to check into your flight, drop your luggage, and pass through security, actually all touchless. And so what does all that mean? It means we have the potential to connect to airports and airplanes in a manner that ensures both a safe and a predictable journey. And I believe that while commercial aviation faces probably the greatest disruption we've actually ever seen, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to transform air travel as we know it. And as we just heard, disruption can and should be a driving force for progress. And at Collins, I think we're accelerating that. We'll talk about that. One more slide, if you'd move to my next chart. One of the first things we did at Collins early in this pandemic is we actually created an industry task force completely dedicated to redefining air travel. And today we're redesigning the passenger experience with a real focus on health, an eye for the future when excitement actually returns for traveling. And we're creating confidence with an eye for safety virtually in every step of a passenger journey. From airport arrival to touchdown, the first kiosk you encounter, and by the way, you don't have to touch it, to the laboratory on the plane, the same. We're delivering solutions that are safer, increasingly contactless, and ultimately frictionless for a passenger experience. Through a layered approach informed by our work with global experts, we're actually helping the industry protect against COVID today, and we'll safeguard those threats into the future. And because of the breadth of our company I talked about, with expertise that spans really across aviation, we have a pretty unique opportunity to take a systems-wide approach to how we protect our passengers and accelerate our recovery. And so by innovating towards a contactless journey, we're actually transforming the experience of air travel for the future. What translates into safety today will yield a more efficient, personalized experience, we believe, for air travels tomorrow. And here's the interesting part to me. Frankly, the challenge isn't the technology. The technology is available. It's available today, and it'll ensure a safe and healthy experience. But it's about how to get it deployed with the right policies that allow it to be used and accelerate our recovery, which means we can't do it alone. I think the last year actually is the collaboration that's needed to occur with health testing. And the vaccines, ultimately, when they come about, how to validate someone's health as they travel through an airport and onto an airplane, like a health passport, which eliminates the need for quarantines that are actually keeping passengers on the ground today. The reasons they're not flying. I think a health passport is actually a way to link technology that already exists into an individual's health status, much like you have a passport today that validates your identification. Look back at 9/11 when that occurred. We saw airlines and airports adapt and adopt new technologies. And I think that's what we need to do today. Even though the threat's different, in addition to validating a person's identity like we had to do then for security, now we have to validate their health. The implication is that if someone has tested negative for the virus in the last 24 hours or upcoming has a vaccine, the health passport would validate that information, allow them to get on an airplane, and then not have to quarantine when they get to their destination, which means they may travel. So the confidence that people would have in the flying public would go up. And now the border authorities, both within states and in countries, would say, I don't have to quarantine. And they have the confidence that the passengers are healthy. So, but it's going to take cooperation across business, industry, government, and it's going to include a lot of startups, testing firms, national governments, of course, to work a system like this to put it in place. But the pieces exist to make it happen. We need government legislators to proactively engage with the technology providers to partner on the solutions that we know exist. Moving from the defense, I think we're all playing now as we're locked down, to be playing offense, enabling accelerated recovery. And the way that's going to happen is, think about this. What happens in the first quarter of next year when people have vaccines, but they're locked down because they don't have the systems to validate their healthiness in order and their safety to travel? So we've got to get together to solve these problems in a coordinated manner. And I think right now we need to get together to figure out how to put the technology and the policies together, because without both, clearly our passengers are stuck on the ground, and worse yet, so is our economy.
Thank you so much, Steve. Tori, based on Steve's comments, it's clear that technology exists to keep us safe when we travel, but every individual, every mom and dad needs to have confidence that they can go there, wherever there may be. How can we bolster consumer confidence in the travel and tourism industry and their use of technology and commitment to safety?
Thanks, Bill. And I would echo what Steve says. I mean, a lot of the data that we have really shows that moms and dads and just the average traveler really want to have the sort of layered degree of assurances that there is a way to travel safely. From a travel industry, I mentioned earlier the health and safety guidance that we put out, and this Travel Confidently campaign really focused on the proper wearing a mask, using the proper sanitation processes, washing your hands, and staying distanced where you can. But obviously, when you're traveling in an airplane or otherwise, keeping that distance isn't as as available. But we do know, I mean, there's a recent Harvard study and a DoD study that says that the air filtration systems in airplanes, are much better and safer than even in the grocery store, right? So we know that the technologies exist to make sure that we can travel in a safe way. It is a layered process, though, that we need. And even knowing that we have these air filtration systems and these practices in place where we do have the masks and the distancing where we can, we do need that extra layer of security. And I think that that's really where we do agree that testing is an important mechanism. I mean, a recent IATA study had said that 83% of folks would not travel internationally if it meant that they had to quarantine. And so that's effectively killing travel as well. And so we really do need to make sure that we are optimizing these technologies in the biometric space is one. We moved to touchless solutions. We know CBP was also in DHS, where TSA is housed, has the facial recognition technology for entry-exit right now. Pull that to the front of the line at the TSA checkpoint and throughout the broader travel ecosystem. That's one way to kind of have these touchless solutions. But then, as Steve mentioned, I think having a way to kind of validate that someone has had a test and or a vaccine is an important step to helping give folks confidence. I do think we have to be careful because, does the workforce all have to be vaccinated? Does the workforce all have to be, have testing? And those are important questions and things that we need to deal with. But that's why we do need to work together with government and the private sector to optimize this opportunity as quickly as we can, because we know that, as we've talked about, the shorter that we can, the faster we can get people to travel, the shorter the recovery will be. And that's really important for the broader economy and just for our happiness. I mean, I'll just touch real quickly on, we've got a lot of data that says that people are, happier when they plan travel. They're happier when they have something to anticipate. So beyond just the economic benefits, there's the personal health benefits that are important to getting people able to move about again. but absolutely focusing on the wearing of the masks, the layered approach to safety is important for now, and we need to expedite these technologies and the coordination to ensure that we have a testing regime that can help to opt out of quarantines, and that as the vaccine comes online, that we can validate those who have received that.
Thank you. So Chairman Sain, COVID has touched every family because of what we've each missed out on throughout 2020. As Tori just mentioned, we're all better off when we're aspiring to go somewhere or planning to be somewhere. But the decline in travel has also had a detrimental impact on state and local economies. How has the shutdown impacted North Carolina, and what strategies have you employed to safely reopen society?
Well, no, it has had a huge impact. And Bill, just so you know, obviously I'm a guy at a beach in a suit, and you can't see my feet, but I do have on black socks and sandals. I invented social distancing. So, it's a little different when you go to travel. Of course, I'm kidding, but it has had a huge impact. I mean, I know for our family alone, it's meant a lot, just because we do enjoy going places and seeing new parts of this great country. And with Alec, been able to travel as national chairman to many of your states and just see what you're doing to really change the world, not just your state, but to change the world. And when we shut off from that, it does have just it's a kind of a dark cloud that hangs over us. And we want to get back to beautiful beaches like you see behind me in North Carolina. I know Steve's comments and what he was saying about what Collins does in an airplane. So many parts of the safety features in that airplane, from health to just keeping the plane flying and everything else that goes on, is pretty amazing. So when we think about ways to innovate as state legislators, I mean, we really do have to think about what is it going to look like next. We know where we're at today, and Tori's comments were right. I mean, it's not just wearing a mask. It's knowing that, having the confidence that the filtration system, that the air being circulated within the plane is clean, and that we're not spreading a virus when you get on the plane. And so you've got all these wonderful innovations that I think will just make travel in the future so much better. Steve mentioned too, some type of health pass, something that gives you confidence as a traveler that everyone around you. I can remember traveling on an airplane years ago during the Ebola virus scare, and on the plane beside of me was clearly some folks from a different country. You could tell by their accents, and they had some bit of a cold or something like that. And in the back of my mind, it was just kind of playing through. I hope I'm okay, and then you kind of rationalize it. You're fine. But at the same time, if we can communicate that level of confidence to travelers as they go, I think that will have a huge impact on how we reboot our economies. Because ALEC legislators know that the only way that we grow our states, our economies, is by being able to freely travel. I mean, it's just as simple as that. Whether you're in the heartland, whether you're on the West Coast, East Coast, anywhere in between, people in this country do like to see what the rest of the country is doing. So, putting those safety precautions, and I mentioned what we were doing at our legislative building. There are ways to travel freely and still be safe. We keep having an argument with our governor that he can't quite process that, but we think differently. There are safe ways to do things. So North Carolina, from a legislative standpoint, we're gonna take those steps. We're also going to take the steps that we need to plan for the future. That we're investing what we can in not just the safety measures, but also in the economic development push, the promotions of having a grander way to communicate to people that it is safe to travel. There's the Let's Go There campaign. I told you that the slide I got is from our visit North Carolina folks. They've got Zoom slides so that I can communicate to you every time I'm on one of these panels that, hey, remember what we have in North Carolina. We've got a lot of great natural resources that you need to come and see. I've also got one with a hot air balloon over in Asheville. I've got all parts of the state. So depending on what the call is, I just felt like today was a beach day. It's a great way to spend a Thursday. But if we can do that as legislators, if we can communicate to our constituents that it is safe, not operating in fear. That's for the other party and for the other folks, the other mindset. Let's operate in a way that says we can be innovative. We can look at companies like Collins that are doing great work to make sure that we're going to be safe as we travel. And the more that we help communicate that message, quite frankly, the more that they see us and other leaders in our states opening up to travel, the quicker we're going to get folks back in to airplanes and to visiting and to doing all the things that they do. And I won't fly to a San Diego. I think and somewhat see all the fear that's going on. When I landed in San Diego the other week, the most shocking thing to me was that all the McDonald's in the airports were closed. That's just not something that Americans are used to seeing. And I think we can get past that very quickly. We are innovators. We're very smart. Our people are smart. The vaccine will come, but there's still going to be this legacy of fear. And I think the more that we help facilitate that conversation, that the companies are innovating, the technology is there. We're finding new and better ways to travel. I think for our own states, we'll come out of this much quicker. And then we can talk about economic development. And then we can talk about workforce development and retention, by the way. With so many folks out of work, just kind of waiting on the sidelines, we could have a talent drain that goes elsewhere. We need to look at policies that one, shore up those industries so that we don't have a brain drain to some other place that gets it better quicker. We need to be that country. We need to be those states that say, we're going to lead. That is what Americans do. That's what you do in your states. We'll do those things and then communicate to our constituents that it is safe to travel.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to a question that goes to all panelists, I think to Steve and Tori first. Now, at ALEC, we're all about public-private partnership and collaboration across industries focused on developing solutions. And in 2020, we've seen an unprecedented level of collaboration between platform providers and school systems to ensure kids can learn, or pharmaceutical and logistics companies to ensure vaccine distribution happens quickly, safely, and effectively. The aerospace, travel, and tourism industries have illustrated similar collaboration, and the end goal is clear. But what have some of your learnings and opportunities you found throughout this year's collaboration?
You want me to go, or Tori, you want to go first?
Please.
You go ahead. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, first of all, I'm just pleased to know that I can wear black socks and sandals, and I feel more part of the group. So thank you for that. I can speak for the aviation industry first. Let me say, early on, we realized how important it was to partner with public health experts. This has been a new area for us. Clearly, we've worked with public health researchers at Harvard now, as well as numerous other institutions to get to the bottom of what we need to do to keep the public safe while we're traveling. The result of that effort was aligning on the need for a layered approach to prevent the spread of COVID. As researchers have found, obviously, it has been said, the masks, diligent cleaning protocols, advanced ventilation filtration systems on the aircraft, which we offer. By the way, those filtration systems, we should tell people and make sure they know, it's the quality of a surgical environment, not even a grocery store. I mean, it's really quite sophisticated systems on those airplanes. And we've learned that education actually is the key. There's a great deal of misinformation circulating out there, and quite frankly, a lack of understanding about the actions that airlines and travelers need to take to reduce the transmission of the virus. But we're confident that by banding together as an industry with associations like Aerospace Industries Association, Airlines for America, the U.S. Travel Association, that we're able to reach a broad audience with a consistent message about safe travel, and any of us would be able to get out on our own and feel safe and confident that you can travel in airports, on airplanes, and then in the future not be constrained by the quarantine risk that we're talking about. So of course, the other big learning that, quite frankly, the reason that I'm here today is that we cannot do this without government support. Government legislators play a key role in linking and enabling the technology part of commercial aviation systems, along with the manufacturers, the airlines, the airports, all necessary to renew passenger confidence to travel and frankly, to jumpstart our economy.
And I'll just echo, Steve's comments, and also I would note Chairman saying it was nice to hear you mention the Let's Go There campaign, and that the good North Carolinians are making you aware of that campaign. Collins Aerospace and U.S. Travel are both part of the work there, which is really to inspire Americans to reimagine and get excited about planning, contemplating a trip, and tapping into that joy that comes with that. So I'll just to touch on that real quick, but would echo, absolutely in that same vein. That's been one of the silver linings, I think, that we've seen through the pandemic, is really that collaboration and the whole of our industry working alongside the broader industry, in addition to working with our government partnerships, our government partners. The health and safety guidance that I mentioned earlier, and Steve mentioned as well, from their end, we also took that layered approach, working with medical professionals and the public health officials to make sure that we were working on something that would be the safest and healthiest approach. And just as we've contemplated how to reopen international travel, or this testing out of quarantines that we're seeing within the states, working with the agencies. There's an interagency working group at the federal level between DHS, DOT, State Department, Commerce, the White House, CDC. That's been, an important place for us to communicate what we're doing as an industry, and how we can help the government make the right decisions to help to safely reopen the borders at the right time. And so agree wholeheartedly that it really is this Herculean effort, but really is helped by the fact that we're all working together. And I think that that's really the key to success here. And again, I would emphasize, we need that consistency in approach. So it is imperative that we work public-private sector together, because the way that we're going to be able to get folks moving again and traveling again is going to be that they're hearing the same messages. Back to the data, because data, is important here. The traveler wants to have clear messages that are consistent, that help them understand what they need to do to travel safely. And so as we are working on how to have that layered approach to safety, and as we look to reopen, these important public-private discussions and collaborations are key to success.
Thank you. So, Chairman Sain, wrapping things up, we've heard quite a bit today about building consumer confidence and the health and safety measures that will allow us all to return to flight. And we've learned from you about the downstream community impact on the economics and economy and tourism shutdowns from earlier this year. As a state legislator, what are the key takeaways for your colleagues in the audience?
No, Bill, I think legislators really do need to understand, four important parts of this. There's the workforce component, there's the economic development component, the technology investment, and we've certainly touched on that, and of course the federal support. Again, we don't, as state legislators, we don't like to look to the feds for much of anything. However, air travel, and for a lot of good reasons, it does fall under a lot of federal guidelines. So as we work with our federal counterparts, as we share with them what needs to happen and what we can expect as state legislators, I think there's several things that we need to think about. On the federal side, it's shaping the future of travel with public and private partnerships. We've touched on it a little bit. Future funding to support FAA grants. If you've been in the legislature for very long, you know that there are grants that were happening prior to COVID that were helping facilitate air travel. Those need to continue and probably need to expand. Grants to keep workers on payroll. I talked about it earlier, kind of touched on it. The downstream side effect of people not traveling and people not working in the travel industry, whether it be the folks who service the airplanes, the folks who are working at those McDonald's that I talked about in the airport, or whatever place you go to eat at in the airport, or anybody anywhere in between, the folks who drive the cars that pick you up at the airport, or the vans to the hotels, or all of that has had a huge impact on those payrolls and those people who want to work. They're good Americans. They've got a good work ethic. They just want to get back to normal as quickly as they can, but they want to do so safely, and we know that. So we need to look at that. Purchase of excess spare parts. These are things that could happen. Potential financial support for commercial aircraft purchasers. Things we know we're going to need as an economy as it gears back up, but things that we could do to possibly think about and what that's going to look like from the federal side of things. Workforce, growing jobs and igniting innovation. Retaining key talent in the aerospace industry. We need to ensure a robust talent pipeline in STEM. The Collins doesn't create these technologies with dumb people. These are folks who have spent a lot of time in school and frankly quite smarter than most of us legislators. But I think about kids like my son at 12 who are very much engaged in STEM and technology. That's the kind of thing that we need to make sure that we're ensuring that pipeline of robust talent. And as we make policy choices, we can make sure that happens. And then training and apprenticeship programs in critical trades, making sure that workforce is up to date and is nimble, quite frankly. So as we even look at our decisions that we make from a university level or a community college level or anything in between, K through 12, as we make sure that our students in our states have ample opportunities to be involved and engaged in those type of programs. The technology investment, implementing ready now technologies to protect travelers and now and in the future. We all want to be safe when we travel. The hand sanitizer, carrying it around in my car every time I pump gas or every time I got on an airplane, that's nothing new for me. And it's not new for a lot of folks, but there's so much more we can do. That's just one small part of it. And we've talked a lot about that, but the health screenings and biometrics are key. But also contactless airport solutions. Steve talked a lot about what Collins has done there. Quite frankly, I like that just as someone who's slightly a germaphobe. I mean, not to the point of scary, but I just know how things are transferred. And the fewer touches we have, the better off we are. And so development of those technologies that are already implemented, I think are key to that. And so any way that we can encourage that, we should be. And then the economic development side of it, investing in tourism and industry. The Let's Go There campaign that USDA is putting forward, I think is critically important that we do communicate that message of safety and that, hey, rediscovering the country we live in. I mentioned it before. Every state that I've ever visited has been, just an awesome experience. Every state has something. I know we're all proud of where we represent, and we should be. But we need to make sure that folks are coming to see what we have. And then piloting programs to support economic development. One of the things that we did at the North Carolina House level, I chaired our economic support working group for COVID-19 well before we went into our short session last year, and finding ways to help those industries that have been most impacted. Again, through no fault of those workers, they didn't choose not to go to work. It's the fact that we've had shutdowns and we've had an inability to get to work because of the virus, because of trying to be cautious and trying to be safe. That being said, now that we are finding ways, new innovative ways to be safe, let's get people back to work and let's get people traveling again. So I think those type of things, as legislators look to see what can work, we can do all of this much quicker than other nations. And the quicker your state does that, the better off your economy is going to be.
Thank you very much, Jason. I'd like to thank our panelists today, Steve, Tori, Stacy, Jason. Thanks so much. We're incredibly thankful for the scientists and engineers at Collins Aerospace, for touchless contact systems, for air purification systems, and of course, for spacesuits. Thank you very, very much for your time in educating our legislators on this call today. And I'd like to turn the floor back over to Mississippi Speaker Phil Gunn.
Well, thank you so much, Bill. That was an outstanding panel, and I can't tell you how exciting I was to hear those comments. I had no idea how much Collins and Raytheon work to keep us safe while we travel, and it's thankful to companies like that who are leading the way to help us return to flight. We're very grateful for that. On a personal note, I am thrilled that Raytheon was involved in this panel today. They have a facility here in Mississippi. We're a great corporate partner with the state of Mississippi. We work hand in hand with them. They do outstanding work, and for them to be a part of this conference this weekend or this week means a lot to me personally. They do outstanding work, and it's a great company, great organization. So this concludes our morning session. I want to remind you that immediately following this session, we'll kick off various workshops. We have two. One is on managing state budgets in the face of COVID-19 budget shortfalls, and the other is on critical theory in education. We've also got some task force meetings taking place this morning. The American City County Exchange, the Civil Justice Task Force, and the Communications and Technology Task Force. So you can see the details on these meetings and others at the home page. So I encourage you to stay engaged this morning, participate in these meetings. We thank you so much for your attendance this morning. We'll look back to seeing you at noon. Thank you.